Since 2014, I've worked with thousands of people from all over the world who are experiencing spiritual awakenings through my private retreats, my in-person events, online coaching programs, and even in individual sessions. And when I've compared the experiences of these clients with my own 6-year-long spiritual awakening, one thing became very clear. Spiritual awakenings are all very similar. No matter where you are in the world, how old you are, what your background is, none of these things matter, because chances are your spiritual awakening will be very similar to what others are going through too. In this video, I'll share the top 6 lessons that I've learned about spiritual awakenings from the 2,000 plus clients I've worked with, so you can know exactly what's happening to you and understand it, and also feel supported along the way. Coming up, hello, beautiful soul. I'm going to be doing a series of live in-person events from November 17th through the 20th, where we're going to have live coaching. So you're going to have all your questions answered about spiritual awakening, sacred partnerships, all kinds of different topics. You're going to learn how to connect with your spirit guides, how to develop your psychic abilities. We're also going to be launching my second book, Walking with the Masters, during this event, and there is a lot more going on. If you want to learn more about this unforgettable event, click on the link below for a full description and also for live streaming tickets for people who aren't able to make it in person. I hope to see you there. When I had a spiritual awakening back in 2013, I remember one of the first things I felt was I just felt lonely. It was so lonely at first because I didn't really have a lot of people that I could talk about what was happening to me around me. Not a lot of people understood what was happening to me, and I didn't even know how to fully express what was happening to me inside and outside. Like, there was just so many changes happening. My personality was changing, my dreams were changing, the way I viewed the world was changing, everything was changing in a really, really fast pace. Then suddenly I started to communicate with my spirit guides. I started to experience wild synchronicities, and all of these things, while they were amazing, they were also very scary at first. And then when I started to work with people and I started to make videos on YouTube, I noticed that other people were going through the same issues I was going through. Everybody was essentially talking about the same thing on my Instagram feed, on my YouTube feed, on emails. And over the years, with the 2,000 plus clients that I've worked with up until now, they have all given me valuable insights and some key lessons into the nature of spiritual awakenings. Lesson number 1 is that they go deep, okay? So spiritual awakenings are not superficial. It's something that goes very, very deep. So it's not about doing meditation or doing a yoga class every day. Doing these practices doesn't mean you're having a spiritual awakening. I used to encounter this phenomenon when I was growing up in a small village in Portugal. Everybody was Catholic and everybody went to church on Sunday. But as soon as Mass finished, a lot of times people would already be gossiping right outside of the church or talking badly about each other right outside of the church right after Mass. And that really bothered me because I would be thinking, what is the purpose? What's the point of even coming to church if you're not going to internalize the teachings, if you're not going to follow the teachings, or if you're not going to question and go deeper into what it means to be religious or Catholic? And in the same way, it happens in spirituality too. Just because you're doing meditation or yoga, a lot of people are doing this because it's simply trendy, not because they're using it to facilitate a spiritual awakening. So when you're having a genuine spiritual awakening, it goes very, very deep and it affects every facet of your life. It takes you to confront your deepest demons. It takes you to confront your fears. It gets you to heal unhealed trauma, pain that you had from the past. When you're having a spiritual awakening, you really go deep into every facet of your life. Not only does a genuine spiritual awakening cause you to confront your deepest fears and question everything, but it also leads to this little bubbling question that's constantly going on when people are going through a genuine spiritual awakening. And that question is, what more is there to my life? Okay, so when you start asking this question and going deeper, you start to turn over every single stone of your internal environment. And the deeper you go into the things that you've been struggling with, the things that have been holding you back, the pains that are unhealed, when you start to really turn over all those stones, that is really what a genuine awakening is all about. The more that you go deep, the more that you uncover and turn over all of these stones, what I find too is that people start to become more humble and more curious. So it's really interesting. And you can tell this, if you're out there and you're looking sometimes at people that are going to yoga classes that are regular yogis or regular meditators, but at the same time they feel like they know everything, that's when you know that the spiritual awakening isn't very genuine. Because when it is genuine, people tend to become more humble and more curious about life, not the other way around. So as my spiritual awakening progressed, I started to have less and less and less certainties in my life, because the more that you go deeper into the way that the universe works, into the inner workings of the universe, you really understand that we know nothing about the universe and that we're just this beautiful, beautiful mystery out here. So people who go through genuine awakenings, they tend to become more humble, they become more curious about life, they adopt what's known as a beginner's mind. Buddhists call it the beginner's mind. And that's the ability to just constantly be open and in this childlike state, open to learning, opening to questioning your certainties. You'll have less certainties as time goes on. And so this ability to just be curious and open is a marker of someone who's going so deep in their healing and in their awakening that they actually let go of any certainties that their ego is holding on to. Lesson 2 is that it's a lifelong process. So although if people ask me, how long my spiritual awakening lasted, I usually say that the main spiritual awakening lasted about 6 years, because those were the years where there was most intense transformation. But in reality, a spiritual awakening lasts your whole lifetime, your whole life. The difference here is that what ends up happening, the reason that I refer to my main awakening as lasting 6 years is because usually the first part of your spiritual awakening is where there's the most intense change, and usually it takes years. That's where you go through a lot of the deepest healing. You're healing so much from the past. You're dropping old baggage. You're being reborn energetically and on a mental level. There is so much going on in the initial stages of the spiritual awakening that, it could seem like it's its own awakening. But then the awakening continues throughout your life. As you continue to ascend, you continue to go up in frequency, you continue to change. The difference here is that it becomes more subtle. It becomes a change that's more subtle, that's not as intense as it was initially. So that's why a lot of people, when you ask them, how long did your spiritual awakening take? They'll usually say, it lasted this long or it lasted that long. But in reality, it's a lifelong process. But it will keep getting, a little bit more subtle and a bit easier for you to deal with and a bit easier for you to live through as you're moving through your life. Lesson 3 is that it could be very challenging. So the reason I've worked with thousands of people is because people come to me for help, usually around the phases of the spiritual awakening that are most challenging to them. So it can be difficult during the spiritual awakening. And there are a couple of main issues that I found people have the most challenges with during a spiritual awakening. The first one is physical symptoms. So a lot of people have physical symptoms, sometimes severe physical symptoms in periods during their spiritual awakening. And the reason the physical symptoms are coming in is because your body is adapting to all of the energy changes that are happening. Your cells, you have trillions of them, and your cells need to adapt in order to take on the new energy that the awakening is causing in you. A spiritual awakening requires you to kind of ascend your energy. And so that means that your physical body needs time to adapt to those changes. And so people can have physical symptoms anywhere from headaches to inflammation in the body, pain everywhere. A lot of different physical symptoms can happen. And these are one of the most challenging aspects of a spiritual awakening. Another one is mental symptoms. I've also worked with so many clients around this that the mental symptoms really are causing agitation and anxiety in them, because they can be going through anything from their personality changing completely to them thinking they're having a nervous breakdown, or thinking they're going crazy or going insane, sometimes thinking they're depressed. There's a lot of mental symptoms that can happen when you're going through an awakening. because your whole personality, the whole mental aspect of you is suffering a rebirth. You're turning into someone new. And sometimes the ego has a little bit of a hard time transitioning to this new you that's emerging during a spiritual awakening. Lesson number 4 is that it gets easier. Okay, so yes, there are challenging aspects of a spiritual awakening, but as time progresses, the awakening gets easier. And one of the main reasons, here's the ding ding, one of the main reasons why it gets easier is because of maturity. Maturity. So the more mature you get on your path in your life and throughout your spiritual awakening, the more mature you get, the easier the awakening is going to be. And you're getting this maturity because now you know what's happening to you. A lot of times people have difficulties with their spiritual awakening initially because they don't even know that that's what's happening to them. So as you acquire this maturity, you have a better understanding of what's happening to you. You have a better understanding how to navigate the challenges of a spiritual awakening, and you start to mature emotionally, spiritually, you start to grow. And so this maturity helps you work through any challenges that may arise in your spiritual awakening, and it just gets easier as the years progress. With this emotional and spiritual maturity, you'll be able to just weather anything, and everything starts to flow much more easily with this maturity. Even when you may be having some bumps in your life or challenges in your life, the maturity always comes in handy to make things easier. What maturity also means is that you become a more secure and calm person. So people who have spiritual and emotional maturity, they tend to be people that are more emotionally calm and stable, meaning that they don't get easily frazzled with life. They just keep walking in this steady pace. And that's what spiritual and emotional maturity brings you. So that is one of the main reasons why everything gets easier with your spiritual awakening as the years progress. Lesson number 5 is that it changes your relationships. Okay, so what a spiritual awakening does, the metaphor that I like to use is of a ripple. So when a stone hits the water, it starts to ripple out, and that's exactly what a spiritual awakening does to your life. It ripples out to all areas of your life, especially relationships that you have with other people. It ripples out even more powerfully to relationships that are closer to you. So relationships will automatically change during a spiritual awakening. And usually what happens with relationships is that they're either going to evolve with you. So the relationships that are meant to stay in your life, they will evolve with you as you're awakening. The people that are meant to stay in your life will also go through their own awakening, and they'll also be able to accompany you in your evolution. The flip side of that, though, is that some relationships may not evolve with you, and they may exit your life, okay? And this is actually the area in which I've had a lot of resistance from clients. Of the thousands of people that I've worked with, this is one of the hardest areas for people. I've worked with clients where that once they start working with me, they already know that they have one or more relationships in their lives that are not working out for them, that are not wholesome. So that's the question you always have to ask yourself is, are my relationships wholesome? And when you have a spiritual awakening, as your energy is shifting, you're going to start to see very clearly the relationships that aren't wholesome. And so those relationships may need to exit your life if they are not able to accompany you. And this is where people generally have some difficulties. I've worked with clients that come to work with me, and they already know intuitively that there are one or two relationships that are not going to be able to accompany them, but they're in extreme resistance in letting go of that relationship. But inevitably what ends up happening is, if that relationship is not meant to stay in your life, as you continue to evolve, it's just going to naturally disintegrate. All right. So big changes in relationships, profound changes in relationships. But at the end of the day, if you always remember this, that the relationships that are meant to stay in your life, they will, and the relationships that exit was just because they weren't meant to stay in your life, because they weren't wholesome to begin with. Lesson number 6 is that it focuses your mission. So when you have a spiritual awakening, you start to turn all of those stones in your internal environment. What ends up happening is you start to figure out what your dreams are, what your desires are, what you want from life, what you dream in life. And you start to let those dreams come to the surface, and you become more ready to live those dreams. This is called your mission. The things that you're most passionate about, this is what your soul's mission is on the planet, because the soul purposefully imbues in you dreams, desires, excitements, joys, and those things lead to your life mission. We're all down here with a specific life mission, and it's different for everyone. And that mission is chosen before you incarnate. So when you follow those dreams, when you follow your passions, you're automatically coming into contact with your mission. And this is why a spiritual awakening focuses your mission more, because when you start having an awakening, suddenly you don't care what society thinks anymore. You don't care about templates. You start to really focus on the things that are important to you. So for example, I've had clients who were great artists, but they were working in a corporate job or at a bank or something like that because of the money only. And so they had a belief that they couldn't make money being an artist or a writer or whatever other passion they had. And so they were working in a job that they didn't like, but paid the bills or made money for them. And so when they have a spiritual awakening, suddenly all of that is just thrown out the window. They start to question their beliefs. They start to heal. They start to open up more to their passions. And as they open up more to their passions, they immediately go towards their life mission, which was those passions, that artistry. It was imbued in them because that was their life mission. Once they start to go into their life mission, they go into their art, they realize that the universe is always taking care of them and they can make money doing anything, that the societal norms of you are only able to make money in certain jobs is not true at all. And they start figuring this out when they're having a spiritual awakening. And so that spiritual awakening is focusing them more towards their life's mission. Now that you've learned these top lessons from my clients, check out this video right here where you can learn about the 6 stages of spiritual awakening, which stage you're at right now, and how to get through each stage with ease. Now, we know.
Icky. You look like Jesus Christ.
How do I look? Is this a good set? My plant on my head? I think it looks beautiful.